All right, well, good morning. My name is Paul Massera. I'm the program manager for the California Water Plan Update Process 2018. And I need to queue up my slide set here. Do we know?
That was I blew my first test.
So while Camille is doing that, I want to just kind of set the stage. What I hope to convey here the next 5 minutes or so is really the context of this water plan and where it's headed, and some of the key takeaways. I'm going to do it at a very high level, so we won't get into the minutiae. We won't get into the chapter review at this time. Again, Camille mentioned we'll have a poster session here, and then we also have a collaboration guide that we'll share with you that indicates specifically the opportunities to continue your involvement with specific regard to reviewing the document. But today, again, I just have kind of some high-level messages for you. As Camille alluded to, this water plan is all about sustainability, advancing the concept, as I say, like to say, kind of advancing the concept to fruition, at least taking strides in that direction. And so first and foremost, I just want to kind of have a high-level, provide for you a high-level description of what we mean when we say sustainability. And part of that description is also kind of starting out with what sustainability is not, and with specific regard to some of our past practices and focuses on water management. So in this case, what we're suggesting is there's a lot of very specific activities. Sometimes we get very hyper-focused on a handful of those activities in and of themselves. This specific subset in this case, or made into an alliteration, is not the full suite of water management activities that get us to sustainability. These are all very necessary, but insufficient. And so that really sets the stage for where we're going with this water plan. We're broadening the conversations. We're bringing in wider array of tools to manage water in California, and then also to enable regions to develop capacity and manage with region-specific solutions driven by regional initiatives representing regional values and priorities. So broadening the conversation. Not that we've ever not had elephants in the room in prior water plan meetings, but I thought I'd bring one with me today. And one of the key messages here regarding sustainability, I talked about kind of evolving it from an ideal into fruition. One of the big messages here is that it requires balance. And I'll talk about in detail what that balance looks like. But for now, I just wanted to illustrate that in this case, in a literal sense, this requires a dynamic balancing, right? It's not just you plant your foot, you're balanced, you're good to go, one and done. What we're suggesting is that to maintain a path towards sustainability, you need to manage in perpetuity. You need to dynamically balance, check in periodically on the values, on the activities and their effectiveness, learn from it, and then implement and adapt and so on. So specifically, bringing it back to water management and the water plan in particular, we framed up sustainability. And I like to kind of describe this as we framed it up in a way that enables us to pursue policies to advance and balance these four aspects of sustainability, and also to help bring them to fruition. So you can create policy in pursuit of these what we're calling four societal values. And then also, as Camille alluded to, unpacking each of these down into a functional set of indicators and outcomes that roll up into these four societal values. And then again, the overarching concept that we can't just advance these as independent activities, but we need to come back and check in and say, in the big picture, how are we balancing these things that Californians care about most? So the second message is really, frankly, a lot of the activities that occur that provide immediate benefits are absolutely necessary. They create tremendous benefits, things like specific projects within the broader system, absolutely necessary. The other thing we're suggesting is beyond things that create the immediate benefits, like, for instance, specific projects or activities, we need to maintain a long view. And there's actually two aspects to that long view that I want to make clear. One is keeping our eye on where we want to be generations down the road. The planning horizon for Update 2018 is 50 years-ish for most technical activities, a little longer in terms of the long view that we present in the water plan. But so point one, keeping our eye on the long view for the generations. And point two is we need to also determine, are we on the right track, and are we on the right track in the most effective manner? Are we most effectively moving towards that long view? So keep bearing that in mind, and that actually kind of keys off of what Kamiar had suggested too. Creating the right indicators is essential for informing us as to what path we're on, and are we on the right path as articulated in the long view. And so speaking of which, I won't read through all of these. However, suffice it to say that this actually is written in narrative in chapter 1. Some of the key takeaways really, though, that some of the more obvious tangibles would be the first bullet, right? Reduced risk from flooding and water shortages, and of course species declines. I think that's a common value and goal, and that's one of the more tangible and obvious. Some of the less tangible and obvious we refer to sometimes as enabling conditions. There are some foundational things that really need to change in terms of water management. I'll talk about those in a moment also if you hold that thought. But other highlights from here is really water policy and investment and actions. Again, getting back to that long view, how essential that is, as articulated in the final bullet here. But again, I won't read these, but they are articulated in we hope, a very story-like manner in chapter 1, which sets up the entire water plan. And just continuing with the long view summary, water management is outcome-based. Funding is more stable in terms of investing in the things that we care about and the things that support those societal values that I just showed you. State government agencies, and I already alluded to this, empower and support regional water management more effectively. So an important tenet and goal of this water plan. And so thirdly and lastly, one of the key takeaways here, and I just kind of set the stage for this, is really we need to be enabled to do this stuff. There's some foundational things that we talk about in the water plan. I should say that we center the water plan around in terms of enabling conditions. Funding is one of them, obviously, legislative authorization, having the right governance system in place. And let me not get ahead of myself here. And so defining sustainability, huge accomplishment, more on that later. And certainly a lot of that in the document, primarily in chapter 1 and 2. But when we say these foundational things that need to enable us to more effectively manage water going forward, alignment of governance is critical within and across layers of government. Integrated planning and regulatory framework. We suggest planning and regulating in a more cohesive way and with the shared intent and specific outcomes, with those two tools being used in tandem. Capacity building, we talked about that at a regional scale, kind of alluded to it. And the same is true at the state government scale, to build the capacity to manage for statewide long-term sustainability. Of course, there's been a lot of renewed interest in infrastructure, rehabilitation, and even modernization. And what we mean here by green and gray is not just the built environment, but also the naturally occurring ecosystems and the services they provide, to ensure that we are investing in that as well, in part and parcel with you might say the concrete and steel per se, with the constructed infrastructure. And then of course, without funding, none of this occurs. So another foundational theme for update 2018. So getting into the document just a little bit, kind of some of the high level messaging. Kamiar already talked about this. Going from 3,500-ish pages down to 100 for the primary document. There will be the same volume and level of information and detail in the appendices for Update 2018, but the primary report is meant to be succinct, it's meant to be more impactful, it's meant to reflect a subset of the recommendations that we all feel are most important for advancing over the next 5 years. So it's focused, sharpened, and more impactful. Specifically, we are continuing to align. Update 2013 began this. We're going to maintain our alignment and enhance our alignment with the Governor's water policy priorities, as I like to paraphrase, in the Governor's Water Action Plan. And then just highlighting some of the features For Update 2018, I talked about the operational definition of sustainability, or description as I like to call it. Water management conditions and gaps. We had an extensive summary of the water challenges, if you will, water management conditions and setting in Update 2013. This is going to, once again, similar to the recommendations, be very sharpened, very focused. These are the most pressing issues, largely centered around those 5 foundational aspects that I just talked about, that we refer to as themes as well. So a more focused description of the most pressing conditions, challenges, and gaps in water management. More actionable recommendations, fewer recommendations. That contributes to the actionability, I'll make up a word here for this purpose, of the recommendations. In addition to that, creating a funding and implementation plan really gives it the impetus, the specificity, such that these are more implementable. They are more legislation ready, and in a condition such that they can actually be more readily implemented than I would say past updates have done. And then progress tracking. So I kind of talked about that earlier. Kamiar alluded to it, the necessity in a complex system. We need to implement things without fully knowing how the system will respond. That's just the hand we're dealt. The system is complex, it's changing, naturally occurring and infrastructure systems. We need to track performance in order to be most effective. Not only can we illustrate a return on investment for state and other types of investment, but also it enables us to course correct. Adaptive management has kind of been the term of art for over 10 years probably. This is similar to that, but it's bringing more specificity and a specific method to actually accomplishing that adaptability. So implementing, tracking progress in a consistent way from the regions up is the most effective way, and we're going to talk about that later in, this afternoon. So that all said, Kamiar mentioned we've launched roughly a year ago, and we've had a lot of coordination. It has led to this draft document that you have in front of you. But just to kind of summarize where we've been, really launching around October of last year. And then over the last calendar year, we've had several meetings with our Policy Advisory Committee. There's been a lot of Tribal Advisory Committee interaction on the upcoming summit, as well as more water plan specific topics. Over the summer, in response to our last policy AC meeting, or actually it was our spring AC meeting, where folks wanted to actually deep dive into some of this content a little more, we held 6 content-specific workshops over the summer. So it's been a busy summer, and we thank you all that had participated, and we'd like to think that we've reflected the vast majority of the feedback that we received, which is what you'll see in the document in front of you. And then, of course, we've been collaborating with our State Agency Steering Committee all along the way as well. And so lastly, where we're headed. We're referring to this as a 75% draft. In reality, it's kind of the average of the chapters. I think Chapter 5, I would say, is about 10%. Chapter 1 is about 90%, so there you go. Actually, logically so, because Chapter 5 is kind of the culmination. We need to know the cost to implement things. We need to lay out the recommendation implementation over time. So it's kind of contingent upon the other chapters. But roughly, we could suggest that the further along chapters are more on the front end, and then, of course, Chapter 5 is more of an annotated outline at this time. And that's all, again, summarized in the posters behind you. January 2018, we will be preparing the administrative draft for routing through DWR Executive Management, and then also through the Natural Resources Agency, prior to release of the public review draft in February of 2018. In the fall of next year, we will keep with the theme and hold our 3rd plenary for Water Plan Update 2018, and that will foreshadow the final water plan. So there will be an opportunity to roll that out and get kind of a preview, and time permitting, perhaps some kind of final refinements on before the final water plan. But let me clarify, though, that there are opportunities, and this is in the collaboration guide. I brought my prop here, but there's also a poster of the collaboration guide. there are opportunities to get involved. We will be holding additional policy AC meetings, tribal AC, and state agency steering committee meetings. The policy AC meetings are public, so those of you not on the committee are certainly welcome and encouraged to attend as well. So I just don't want to leave you in the impression that this is it. This is the opportunity as it stands now to comment. There will be ample other opportunities. And actually, I don't expect you to read this, but this is a snapshot of the collaboration guide, which lays out the specific dates and specific opportunities to get us from where we are today to the public review draft in February of 2018. And I just want to conclude by, again, another plug here where a lot of these conversations that we're having today with really stellar panel members is going to be phenomenally informative for the content of this water plan. That's what we're focusing on today, are those discussions and those panels. Okay, lost my. So anyway, what I'd like to conclude on is, in terms of the document itself, the posters in back provide a summary, and then they will be staffed at breaks, at lunch. And then there's actually, at the last track of the day, there's an opportunity for an extended poster session, again, where the lead authors will make themselves available to engage with you all on the chapter content itself. And then I'll just conclude by saying that's not your last opportunity, because in the collaboration guide, it shows that through October 15th, we can receive comments, which can be incorporated into the public review draft. So about a 3-week window to do that as well. And that concludes my presentation and opening remarks. I'll turn it over to Lisa. We have an interactive activity for you here this morning. And once again, thank you all for participating. I have no doubt we're going to receive a great deal of knowledge, information, and wisdom from you all today. Thank you.
Great, thank you.